Hello and welcome to Meet the Author. I'm your host, Ken Marks. Meet the Author is brought to you by the Institute for Global Transformation. We're a nonprofit, all volunteer organization devoted to transforming the world individually and collectively. We invite you to visit our website at ifgt.net. There you can find just a whole host of resources that we think you'll find interesting, hopefully helpful as well. We invite you to click the join button in the top menu if you'd like to become part of our community. We have several different types of membership available. And if you'd like to support our work, including programs like this one, there's a donate button in the top menu, and click on that. That interfaces very smoothly with PayPal, and we'd appreciate any support that you would care to provide. Letting our audience know that this program is being recorded, our live audience, and we will be publishing this on IFGT's YouTube channel. So we invite you all to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And when you do that, if you're familiar at all with this, but there is a little bell icon next to the subscribe button. And if you click that, then you will be notified when new content is posted. So you'll know when we have this recording available on YouTube as well. So we have quite a few people in our live audience. Typically, I would talk with our guests for the first 45 minutes or so, and then invite the audience to ask questions. But since there are a good number of folks here tonight, I think what we'll do is try kind of bouncing back and forth, if you will. So I'll be asking you, if you would, type your question in the chat. I'll have the chat up, and we'll try to monitor that. But since this is Meet the Author, and one of the ways we like to distinguish this program from others similar to it is to give our live audience a chance to talk directly and be part of the conversation with our guests. So if you'd like to do that, just put Q by your name in the chat, and then we can unmute you, or you can unmute yourself, and then we'll invite you to be part of the conversation. So with that, I would like to introduce our guest tonight. Lissa has been a psychotherapist for about 40 years. During this time, she's been trained and or certified in several modalities, including transpersonal hypnotherapy through the Michael Newton Institute, hypnotherapy through the Ericksonian School, and art therapy. She is the founder of the Enneagram School of Awakening in the embodiment tradition. She's accredited by the International Enneagram Association, and the year-long training provided by the Enneagram School of Awakening is also accredited by the IEA. Liz has published several articles on the Enneagram in the Enneagram Monthly, and you can go to the IEA website and look up those articles in the archive if you wish. Lissa calls what she does in terms of her counseling transpersonal psychotherapy, because she helps people work through personal limiting patterns, as well as guiding them to open to their true nature, which is beyond the personal. And I think many in our audience would understand that very well. Through an energetic transmission, people are guided to their next step on their spiritual journey. Lissa has been an artist her whole life, and her art usually parallels her spiritual process. When her process was more concrete, her paintings were very realistic. And as she began to explore the imaginal realms, they became more otherworldly. More recently, as she was integrating the known experience of being the boundless, her art became more abstract. So with that, I welcome, and I guess I should have also said, Lissa is not just this person that you heard about, but she is someone I have known for a long time. I count as a dear friend, and perhaps more importantly to this conversation, at least, a teacher on my own path. And so I was delighted when we had a chance to get together recently, and she let me know that she had recently written Boundless. And so delighted to have the opportunity to present this platform and have you share that with us. So welcome, Lissa.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Great. So for starters, Lissa, if you could just kind of tell folks a little bit about the book, maybe why you wrote it now, and were there hopes or goals that you had for sharing your story now, and maybe what doing so might result in?
Well, Boundless started with I was writing what seemed like maybe it was going to be a blog. There were like some things I wanted to say. I noticed that there were questions or unclarities in people's minds, and I thought I would pick a topic and write about it in the clearest way I could. And soon I realized it was becoming a book. And then I realized that I was every topic I wrote about wound up traveling through various permutations and going to the Boundless. So I knew that that was what it was called. And it had gotten clear to me really in the last few years, and maybe the last couple of years. Really, I've known this all my life practically, but in the last couple of years, it got really clear to me that we are the Boundless. So I was in various ways trying to express that, and then when I realized it was going to be a book, I thought maybe it'll be a pointer and it'll help people actually understand in a clear way that we are the Boundless and how to connect there.
Well, that's what a lot of what I got out of it when I read it, and part of the kind of synergy that I saw with this book, knowing you and the work of the IFGT, is our goals of trying to help ultimately, hopefully, transforming consciousness and spirituality throughout the planet. But that is an individual by individual experience that gets there collectively, and we'll touch back on that later on. But a lot of our journeys are fraught with many different aspects, some of them wonderful, but some of them not so. And we might get to that a little bit more as well. But I found this book to be helpful in that when you're not alone and someone else can speak to maybe what you've experienced, and then maybe even illustrate what further unfolding might include. That's kind of my sense of it. So I was curious if that was a goal or thought that you also had when you were writing it.
I mean, speaking to what you're saying, as I was writing it, some personal stories came out, and I was grateful for that, because it felt like, yes, I think somebody, I was leading a group a couple of months ago, and somebody said, but you've never suffered. And I said, oh my God, are you kidding? You're absolutely incorrect. And, we don't have time right now to go into it, but so I was grateful when some of those stories came out while I was writing the book. I didn't want it to be a memoir. I didn't want it to be about Lissa Friedman. I wanted it to be about the Boundless. But I also wanted to show that I'm really like everybody else. There's nothing special going on here.
Right. And that, I think, is also one of the points that makes it a very salient and helpful guide, is that another misconception I think that we can kind of fall into is that spiritual awakening and whatever else, glamorous title you want to attach to that, are for just the sages and gurus that, hang out in caves for 40 years and then come out, somehow enlightened, or whatever term you want to use. That's not the case. And so while you are very distinguished, so you have a professional career, you are also just salt of the earth and one of us. And so, it is an experience that any one of us can have. And I think most of the people that will either be here tonight or watch this later on can relate to this. But if you're newer to this, hearing and reading these types of things can be very helpful.
I hope so. Yeah.
So one of the challenges, and I think maybe it would be helpful if you can try to do this now, but as we continue to unfold and you go toward something you might experience that you've called the boundless, communicating that in words often becomes more and more challenging. So I'm curious, did you have that experience in writing the book? And what would you like when you talk to folks about this? How do you define the boundless?
Okay. So, so the boundless, you've all read, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with it. I use the word boundless, but I could say consciousness. I could say awareness. I am, I am that, divine. I could use any word like that, any label like that, and it's, to me, they're all the same thing. But the experience for me in realizing this, I've been doing for many years, I've been doing a deep exploration on consciousness, let's say. So as I explore, I notice that all my thoughts, all my emotions, all my sensations occur within something. I could say that it occurs within me. I could say it occurs within my awareness, or I could say it all occurs within consciousness, because whatever thought comes, I know about it. Whatever emotion comes, I know about that emotion. So the I know is consciousness. For most of our lives, we think that we have our own individual consciousness. And certainly humans, we all, as people, go through an individuation process and become, some, better ego-based people, but it's a separate thing. But as we are on our spiritual journey, we begin to let go of our separateness. And what we know these days is that there really is one consciousness. And people on a spiritual journey hear that as a concept. There's one, only one, we're all one, it's only one consciousness. But science is now finding that they can't find consciousness in the brain. It seems to be a spaciousness outside the brain, and that the brain is a portal and receives consciousness. So if there is that, we're not like all walking around with our own individual bubble of consciousness. It's that we've had a misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. We think that what shows up inside us is we own it, our consciousness, and it's not. So the first step is you say, oh, here are my thoughts. I'm thinking about this. Oh, and I'm having this feeling, this little sadness. I've had a sad thought. I'm feeling some sadness. Okay, I see that. I know that. It's within my consciousness. So sometimes we call that witnessing or observing. I'm observing that I'm having these thoughts and feelings. I have this observation. Okay, but now there's something that knows that you're observing. Something knows it. So you back up one more step. Oh, I'm aware. Something is aware that there's an observer that is observing the thoughts and the emotions. And that, as I tune in there, I can't find a boundary. Yeah. As I tune in there, it goes on and on. It's infinite. And so as I would talk about this from various places and various topics. The stepping back, and oh wait, can I find the edge? No, can't find the edge. It's boundless. That's how I would say it.
And again, I don't know how else to use language to explain that. And I think, I guess I should ask, would you agree that there is a limit to being able to do that? And then it's up to each person to experience it for themselves.
Absolutely. And when I might say, oh, it's boundless, somebody else is going to taste it and say, oh, that's what she meant by boundless. It's actually this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, they might say, it's knowing. I didn't even, it's knowing, or it's, so, but, and we've all, I know that I've had that when I've read spiritual books. I'm like, oh my God, that's what those words have always meant. But now I see it as this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and as many people as there are on the planet, or not on the planet, that's how many spiritual journeys there are.
Right.
So what works for me, it just worked for me.
And then there are those familiar elements. I'm struggling with the words. I was going to say common, but it's not
familiar.
common. But yes, there are some things that are recognizable when you start trying to share those experiences with others. And that's, I think, part of what we're trying to do is IFGT and what your book does. Yes,
exactly. Yes. And I think that it's important to try to use words and try to share. I really do. There was a while where I didn't think that was important, but I do. I feel like it's very important to try to put into words what you know and what you're understanding, and see if the words can go beyond.
Right.
So they're just pointers.
Right.
But the clearer the words are, the more they are connected to that energy. The energy is coming through. The simpler they can be, they're pointing more directly at that.
And even that, I have heard for years that expression, they're just pointers. But when you come from a perspective of maybe perhaps more intellectual and using words to communicate in that mode, hearing the phrase, they're just pointers, even that doesn't really take on the meaning intended until you've had the experience.
Exactly. Yeah. Because when you've had the experience, then you struggle. What are the words for this?
Right.
So
I think I should then point out that compliments do, because you wrote a whole book and obviously probably wrestled with that concept and yet wrestled it to the ground and produced this book that does provide a lot of information, a lot of guideposts, and at least the pointers, depending on where people are on their own journey and their own path. So
yes,
I'm going to switch topics here. We have one question so far, and I'm going to kind of introduce the topic because I don't know how many people in either the live or later viewing audiences know a bit about this subject that is also a major part of your work, as I mentioned in the introductory remarks. So let's talk a little bit about the Enneagram, maybe how you see that connecting, interlacing with these other experiences. And then Peggy has asked a particular question about it, so we can invite her to unmute after you kind of give some remarks about kind of setting up what is the Enneagram and how does it relate to your journey and the Boundless.
So I'm going to ask you all a question. You can just raise a hand. How many of you know have a basic understanding of the Enneagram? Because I don't want to give a talk on the Enneagram tonight.
No, not fully, but I do.
So the Enneagram is a system for understanding the form of your ego pattern. So it is an ancient tool that its original purpose was for liberation and awakening. These days, it's used for other things. Getting together a good corporate group, finding a mate, becoming better at your individual separate personality. That wasn't the original purpose, and that's not how I use it. I use it because the name of my school is the Enneagram School of Awakening. So it's for a process of awakening. And in my life, it was enormously important to me. So I had been meditating and had several different teachers for many years, and actually had some pretty decent kind of expanded awakenings. And yet there was still a way that I approached life that had this limitation and a way of suffering that was kind of unique to me, but not completely unique to me. And so I learned the Enneagram, and I began to use it as my spiritual work. And so it helped me see my own patterning that I could, and it gave me, if I could see it, then it gave me a way to work with it, to release the tight constrictions of it, so that you can go towards the boundless, right? So one of the first things that I've learned with it and that I teach is there's a pattern. It's not who you are. It arises in you. You can observe it. You can step back and kind of join consciousness or the boundless. Be that, not be this pattern that is arising in you. So it helped me, because it helped me see when that pattern showed up that, oh, that's what's going on. I don't have to take it so seriously and think about it and process it so deeply. I can just say, oh, there's that. And I don't need to deal with that right now.
Yeah. And I would say, at least from my personal experience with it, it was absolutely a place, a step on the path that, was part of what kind of helped to begin to crack the facade of this separate self, and to understand that a little bit more. There had to be some way of, beginning that process. And I'm not saying it was the very beginning, but it was certainly pivotal to me. So you talk about your own type, and for those not familiar who may be watching, I will just chime in and you can correct me, but the word Enneagram is derived from the Greek word for 9, because there are 9 types associated with the model. Gram for the graphic, or there is a pictorial graphic of how that model is illustrated. Right. So Enneagram, and you do lengthy classes on this, so we're not going to cover all of that in this evening.
Yes.
But people get a predominant type in this model, right? And then
so in this model, so I'll tell you a little bit more. You're born with a type. And there's more than 9. There are 9 basic types. There are 3 subtypes for each of the 9. That makes 27. Is that there's a stacking, a hierarchy. One is on top, one is in the middle, one is below for the different types. So that makes different patterns, right? Then there are wings, and so I edited it all up at one point, and there's 109. Oh, excuse me, 108. Which is another 9. So, and it's one of those numbers. So there's a lot of types. What I learned somewhere early on, because I always had this propensity to, when I was trying to understand how somebody functioned or felt or experienced the world, let me put it that way. When I was trying to understand how somebody else experienced the world, I would try to embody what it felt like to be them, and then I would know. And I did that as a psychotherapist. Nobody really knew that I was doing it, but I would feel them kind of in me, and oh, that's what's going on. And then I could help them better. We could call that empathy. I don't know what you call that. But so when I started learning the Enneagram, I was like, here's this one pattern. What does it feel like energetically? Oh, it feels like that. And here's another pattern. What does that pattern feel like? And I would feel into it based on what I would see in another person who really embodied that pattern pretty clearly. Like, oh, okay. So if I was feeling that, what would I feel like? Where would it be tight in my body? Well, what would my voice sound like? How would I walk? How would I move? And so I learned that each pattern has its own energetic fingerprint. So when I'm working with people in a workshop, and I don't like to have a lot of people in the workshop because I want to work with each person's energy, I can recognize the type by their energetic field. And what I try to teach other people how to recognize that, how to see it.
Yeah.
So that's a little more about the Enneagram.
Thank you. That it really is fascinating. And when I read in the book, the description you just provided about, how you incorporated that and actually trained yourself to kind of take on the different energy patterns. I mean, that's phenomenal in my mind, just because that's about as accomplished a therapist as I could have ever imagined, and someone that could really understand you. So it's powerful. It's helpful. I really appreciate your introducing me to it and whatnot. It's been helpful. I think it might just, I don't want to belabor this terribly long, but the question Peggy had might be of interest to other people, which is that you talk about being a 2. So the Enneagram says you're either a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9.
And if you know the energies, what I'm doing right here is completely 2.
Okay, so she says she's also a 2. So just wanted to know if you could talk about it a little bit more, kind of what that is.
So it's a heart point. So there are 3 head points, there are 3 heart points, and 3 gut points. And the heart points, and as you know, I'm not going to go through all 3 because again, now that this is becoming an Enneagram talk, right. But there are 3 heart points, and heart types get their understanding about themselves and the world through their emotions, how I feel about things. Head types, how I think about it. What information can I have? What emotions do I have about that? So, and what the gut is, what instincts, what sensations, what instincts do I get in my gut, in my belly? That doesn't mean that the heart types are really clear in their heart. Like the head types are not necessarily clear in their head, and the gut points aren't necessarily clear in their instincts. So we get clear as we clear it up, as we clean it up. So 2, the 2 pattern is a heart point. I talk about it as being the upper part of the heart. It's a little buoyant, it's a little upbeat. You can see it in how I smile and I reach out to everybody. And, I'm like, this is on my computer, but I'm still feeling all of you, and I'm really happy to feel you all. And you can see it in my smile. So there's this outward moving, encompassing compassion that happens with 2. There's other negative qualities too, but I'm giving you the good stuff.
Kind of going back a little bit more then to the book and your experiences. And one of the things that I know I have wrestled with any number of times is a feeling of thinking that I should have already done something. Like even reading the book, I was like, have I experienced this? And should I have? And, how can I get there? And you write about how you tried all sorts of things. You've been on your journey for most of your life. You described the first experience when you were in grade school,
Mhm.
pretty young. And so, uh, and yet it took a while for this to get there. And so maybe talk about that a little bit. And then, in your opinion, is there a button that you can push, or a pill you can take, or something that, or is there a shortcut? Because I think a lot of people these days may be looking for that shortcut to whatever they think there is to get there.
If your journey is to find a shortcut, you will find it. If your journey is not to have a shortcut, you're not going to have a shortcut. Um, that's how many, there's all these, we're all on our own journey. And for me, I've read many spiritual teachers, and many of them have 2 or 3 awakenings, and like they get it. They put it together, they know what they've seen and experienced, and it becomes clear to them, and they begin teaching. I had to I had to be hit over the head with it many times. And and looking back, I was like, I knew this when I was 6 years old, for God's sake. But I didn't know. I didn't know that I knew it. And then I knew it again in my 20s. And then over and over again, over and over again. And it was like, oh my God, I am consciousness. That's what I am. I'm that. This is an appearance within consciousness. All of this is an appearance.
Yeah, well, maybe we don't have to go into it too much, but there was a point in reading this, and even made a note in my questions for tonight about the portrayal in the Matrix movie series. And is that something you could relate to and kind of say, yeah, that's a good example of kind of what you experienced, or what you would use as maybe a pointer?
Maybe.
Okay. Not with all the war and everything. I'm just saying that it seems like what your realization was, and what I understand so far, is what we think reality is.
Yes, it's parallel. Yes, what we think reality is, it's not what it is.
Yeah.
And in the book I describe where the deep aha really started. I mean, and like I said, I was on a spiritual journey since I was, I say in my 20s, but 6 years old. So, but somewhere around in my early 50s, I was sitting on my couch in my living room on my own self-appointed retreat, because my husband at the time was away on a conference. And I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm about to meditate again, happily alone. It's wonderful to be alone. And, and like I'm sitting on a couch, and a thought just plops in and says, something is dreaming me. And I'm like, what? It was so clear. It wasn't like a voice, but it was such a clear thought. Something is dreaming me, and it threw me. It really disturbed me. But it was like the precursor, because then I was like, I don't even know if I can meditate now, because I don't know. Am I what am I? What's going on here? Do I believe that? Is that like? But there was something about it that made me feel like I just heard something that's true, but I don't get it at all. And from there were like these several really profound experiences that were all showing me this. And it took me about 10 years to understand it.
Right. So again, helpful, in my opinion, at least, because here you have a person who started her spiritual journey at 6 years old and was on it. I'm guessing, from what I know of you and what I read, pretty continually. I mean, I don't know if
Yeah,
there were
pretty,
large
yeah.
breaks.
Yeah,
And
not,
and yet even this, after that experience of hearing or clearly receiving something is dreaming you, still took a while to figure that one out.
yeah, because he can't figure it out.
Yeah.
But because at that point I was on my own my own meditation retreat because I didn't have a teacher. I wasn't interested in having teachers at that point. But after I had that message and I had those few experiences that were really amazing, I went from teacher to teacher saying, "What happened? Can you tell me what happened?" And everybody would give me some like, "Oh, that's like an experience of no self." Like, that doesn't help.
Which is another great point,
It's
that you may have to go to multiple teachers.
no, but it was helpful because I realized that I didn't have to go,
Hmm.
and that whatever they had to share with me wasn't really helping me, and I had to sit with myself.
Yeah, true. Right. Right. One thing I'm trying to do with this program is to get our guests' thoughts and opinions on some of the more pivotal things that IFGT is working on. And so I'm going to jump to that line of question. Maybe we'll come back to some other things, but I want to make sure we save time for this. And I want to set it up a little bit. So I'm going to read this and then ask you some questions. So the IFGT's goals of helping transform consciousness person by person in each one's individual way is linked to the concept of there being a threshold that can or will be met, at which point consciousness ultimately shifts across the planet for humanity. And this threshold is often referred to in various circles and literatures as the tipping point. So I want to talk a little bit about the tipping point with you. Maybe first of all, just kind of one of the aspects of that is that more and more people are awakening, and hence will get to the point where enough people have so that there is this, all of a sudden, then there is this shift, or maybe not all of a sudden, but with enough people. And so wondering, is that something you believe or perhaps know, that there is an increase in the numbers of people that are awakening?
It feels true. That's what I can say. It does feel true. And the way that I actually see that and can feel and kind of literally see, but not with these eyes, but I can see, is that when we are, and Ken, you've experienced this in my groups, and you've experienced it in Debbie's group as well. So when someone is when someone knows, how do you say this? Because everything I want to say is not quite right. When you're connected to the boundless, you know you are the boundless, and that energy is coming through you. People around you feel it. There's a transmission. They feel it, then they are embodying it, and they walk around, and other people are infected from them. And so there's this ripple effect, and the energy is a palpable energy. It's not something that you can mistake. You can really feel it, and you can also sense when you're sharing it with someone, even if you're not teaching a group, or maybe you're in the supermarket, but you know this, and you know that you're connected to that, and you smile at the cashier, and right there's a connection, and you know that something happened there, and that's part of that spiraling that happens.
Mhm.
And there's more people awakening, and so there's going to be a more spiraling going on, and it can be exponential.
So you would also kind of, for again, lack of better terms, subscribe to this thought or theory or belief or knowing that there is this threshold, this tipping point that we're approaching.
It feels right. I can't say anything better than that. It feels right to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's certainly does to me and those of us working with IFGT, and you know, but they're not the kinds of things. We haven't done a poll. There hasn't been a world census to say, you know, are you awakening, and compare those numbers to some other time to see if that's empirically true. But everything else that isn't that 3D, if you will, kind of feels that way. Let me, well, so we've had other guests and kind of explored this as well. And there is an element of, such as the work of the IFGT, to see if there are things that we can actually do to help this along. Yeah, and so right. Do you think that is possible to do that? And if so, do you have any suggestions or recommendations for us?
I think that I perused some of what you're doing, and I think that you're really on the right track. So you have group meditations. When you're meditating, it's not just for you. If you're meditating individually, so let there be a point where you open that up and allow that energy to expand through the whole world. And it may seem like, how do I know that that's happening? But just trust that as that energy that you're experiencing spreads out, it spreads out infinitely. So it's going to affect the whole planet. Mm-hmm. And the more people doing that, the more that will be. And the more little groups gather and share, and they share, and it goes out.
Yeah, it's
working.
You're right when you mentioned that. I have felt it in the group setting, and not sure if you're familiar with this work, but a woman named Lynn McTaggart, who has written some and conducted some studies, and is fairly widely known or becoming widely known, has done a lot of work with groups as small as 8 people having significant effects on others. And yeah.
I think we can have a significant effect sitting in our living room doing it.
Yeah. Well, maybe we have in Debbie's living room.
Yes, I know. Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. But yeah, I think that having that intent to let it spread energetically and not personally. So really, well, what we need to do is take the separate person out of it. So if I'm sitting there, I'm saying, and I have the thought, Lissa, I am very clear and I am going to spread this. I don't think much is going to happen. So how I approach this is I let go of everything that I know, everything that I know about myself, all of my identity, my history, what I've done, my beliefs about the world, political, moral, emotional, all gone. So that this energetically dissolves, and then the intent of sharing. So don't share from the personal. Mm-hmm. So small. I mean, it's not going to be harmful, but it's such a small sharing compared to if that is cleared out and what's left is the energetic expanse.
Beautiful. Thank you. We do have a question, and I'll invite the person to unmute in a moment, but gives me a chance to mention that This is Diane Collins, who will be our guest next month.
Well, I've been enjoying your perspective and the way that you articulate. And I did have an experience of the Boundless as you were speaking, Lissa.
Yay! Great. Good.
And that's what it's about, right?
That's exactly
I
right.
have, I like to know, well, when you said, and you had the experience when you were meditating and, you're being dreamed, and then you said it took you 10 years to really fully understand, right? We're always go to the next level of insight, understanding, evolution. But my question for you is, and so when you got the understanding, what did that, I don't want to sound.
Now, this is a good question.
But what did it do for you?
It's important to say. What did it do for me?
Okay. Yeah. What did it do for you?
So, something deeply relaxed inside me. I feel love for everyone and everything. I'm often weepy because of the love that I experience, because what it showed me was we're all that. Not that I'm that we're all that. And it helped me see that in each person as I'm speaking to them or just walking by them. And sometimes it just, the beauty just touches me. And so it did that. Joy, the beauty of trees, of birds, of even walking through something that might seem ugly was just so beautiful.
Because it's part of the unfolding. But you never had that experience prior?
I did a lot. And it would come and go, and I didn't know why it was there and why it didn't come. Yes, I had it a lot. I didn't.
Would you say then it was more like a recognition rather than something new? It was like a recognizing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the pieces of the puzzle fit together, and it was like, oh my God, that's what I've been seeing and knowing for a very long time.
Mm.
But then I would, until it all kind of clicked into place, I would get lost in the stories of my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. I have to tell you one other thing if we have time, Ken.
Yeah.
That it was so synchronistic for me that you said that, well, who was it that brought up the two, Peggy? And wanted to know about the 2, and then you said you were a 2. I would have thought you were a 4, but I don't know that much. But I know a little bit. And when I was introduced to the Enneagram by someone who works in that also as a consultant, and then we were like she said, well, try to look at 3 types, blah, 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 and try on a 2. And the way that she said it was like the 2, you read in the literature, the helper. And I went, what? I don't want to be a helper. I don't want to be a 2. And it was like.
That's part of being a 2 is you don't want to be a 2.
I'm glad to hear you say that. But then then you start to see, right, the automatic patterns of it. And well, maybe I do want to help people, but I don't want to help people. And so you can see the both end of it.
Yes, that's right.
But I was happy to hear you say, because I never heard that other part that you said about, the heart part. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Give me a little food for thought for next month, Diane. There are many ways to help. Perhaps, writing a book to be read by many is a way of helping. So
yes, it is.
Yeah. Thanks, Diane. Appreciate your participation in the questions. And so I have a few more, and I'm keeping my eye on the chat and the clock as well.
Mhm.
But, so with the caveats that perhaps no one on this call now, and maybe no one that watches this in the future, will have this question, but people do. And I've even talked to people who are on the path. They get some things and they resonate with some things, but they're not quite ready to accept some of the other things that after a while you begin to open up to more and more as you begin to realize that what you thought reality was and you thought you were this separate self, as that begins to dissolve and you develop more of an experiential knowing. But until that happens, there can be some things that you might hear about and go, what? And so you describe some experience with some, you call them the light beings, light bodies.
Yeah.
And describe some out of body experiences. There's a whole world of things to learn about in terms of various subtle beings and different states of existence and whatnot. And to some, again, I think certainly a lot of mainstream would raise his eyebrows at these types of things still. So my question to you is, you're also a professional therapist. Mm-hmm. And so how do you distinguish both what you experienced or what you might hear if other people were to bring similar experiences to you? How do you distinguish those from what you would say is a diagnosable mental illness?
The kind of energy that experience brings to the person. So for me, it was a very positive, light, helpful experience. And it's for those of you who haven't read the book, I had visitations of beings from the time I was 9 to 16. And it was unmistakable. They would sit on my bed and talk to me. And I would feel good about it. I liked it. And they would leave and I'd go to sleep, and I didn't tell anybody about it. It wasn't disturbing. I wasn't scared. I felt like I knew them. I was happy that they were there. It was comforting. And then I lost track of them. They may not have lost track of me, but I lost track of them for 40 years, something. And found them again when I was being trained to do hypnosis. And my experience of them when I reconnected was pure joy and love. But I was still feeling very grounded. So I wasn't like floating around. I wasn't having hallucinations. I wasn't disturbed. I wasn't hearing weird voices. I might hear a voice here and there, but they're all helpful and helping me on my journey.
As a therapist, if you had a patient or a client and they came to you and described something, could you distinguish between a similar experience and a hallucination?
Yes, but I'm not sure that I can tell you how.
Okay.
And I think I'm trying to. There's an energetic to a disturbed person having a disturbed experience. And there's a different energetic to a person who's sharing something that is bringing them some joy and helping them feel love for people.
One thing I learned a couple of years ago is the official guide that mental health professionals use for the official DSM that says this is your mental health diagnosis, added diagnoses for spiritual awakenings. I don't know if that's the term they use, but to distinguish them from mental health disorder.
Yeah, but it's a completely different thing. But they're really, being that I tune into energies, there's such a different energetic when someone is having a disturbing hallucination.
It's not uncommon, and I know I experienced it, and I've come across many sources since that, at least with some experiences that one can have along this in this realm of awakening, if you will, can leave you initially with a question of what is happening to me? Am I going crazy? And so I'm hoping that even if one person hears this tonight or sees this in the future and they're struggling with that, they see this and say, well, you could be, but you very well may not be.
But you very well may not be. And, I also said that, after that something is dreaming me thing, and then the couple of pretty powerful experiences I had after that, months apart, but I see it as one thing. I wasn't happy about what I was being shown. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be dreamed. I wanted to be Lissa. I mean, I don't want to be a dream. I didn't want to be the Boundless. I wanted to be Lissa. I wanted to be Lissa that knows this, but not Lissa gone, So I found it very disturbing. And I would share my experiences with other spiritual buddies, and they'd say, well, that sounds great. Why? I mean, you should be thrilled. And like, no, I don't like it. I mean, and I was serious. I didn't like it.
You use the term or reference the term annihilation.
Yes.
As part of the experience that you had. And I know that I've had, or maybe having that experience, I don't know. And it's not uncommon also as a part of the path to, the ego doesn't want to, it's scared of dying. And
oh yeah. And it feels like it is. And it is actually.
It is, or being absorbed, I think is.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't die.
I mean, it's really actually what's happening is you begin to recognize that there is no ego. There's nothing there.
Right. But the ego doesn't want you to know that for a while. So. Yeah. Which I think can be why it can take a while. And I think also if we can help reinforce or comfort some who may end up seeing this, that or seeing it tonight, that there is a it's okay. It can take a while, and just kind of let this happen. I think for me at least, and I don't feel unique in this at all, the progress always seems to happen once I stop trying.
Well,
not in terms of giving up a practice.
One of the things that needs to happen is the person that's trying, you need to let go of that person.
Right.
The trying only happens from that person. So when we surrendering, letting go is a big deal. Big, huge.
Yeah, it is. And it isn't going to happen overnight, or just because you understand, okay, I'm going to surrender now.
Okay, yeah, no. You're going to go, how do I do it? Oh, no, I don't know. It's too scary, And
it's like knowing if you want to get, down from the high dive, you can climb down the steps, but you're not going to accomplish what jumping off the board does. But you might stand at the edge of that board for a while before you.
Yep, I did.
How to let go. So,
yeah.
Hannah has 2 questions. Hannah, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yep.
And I think that they're related to one another. But one question I have was, I actually do understand at least a little bit the experience that we're all part of this great consciousness, that we're not separate from other people or everything that's around us, animals, trees, flowers. Like, I understand that experience. I'm wondering 2 things. One is, what does it mean, though, that we are all currently sitting in a room in front of a computer? We don't look like each other. We don't act like one another necessarily. I mean, come on, like, we all do and need the same thing. So I get that. But like, what does that part of it mean, number one? And number two, what does it mean if we all were connected? If we all were having the experience of the boundless all the time, like what in your mind would that be like or mean?
So let me try to tackle that one first. I don't know what it would look like, because we would still be all these separate people. But I mean, we would appear to be these separate people. But we would know when we look at each other, we would know, oh my God, he's me. Not me, not that I think Ken is Lissa, but that I could see that consciousness, same, we're the same. And I wouldn't want to hurt him, because it would be like hurting me. So there couldn't possibly be war. Nobody would try to hurt anybody else, because it would be like hurting yourself. So that's a result of knowing that we are all one thing. It's hard, because we're going to try to wrap our minds around the idea that these bodies, these individual personalities, are appearances that come from kind of like it. If the boundless were to come into form and make a form and send it out into the world, and then make another form and make another form, that these are these forms that are not solid. Our bodies are not solid. There are no solid forms. There are molecules floating, and then they come together, they form something, they come apart, they come together, they come apart. And so we're all these appearances, but we're divine. We're from there. So it's not that that makes us meaningless. It gives us even more meaning. We are the direct manifestation from the divine. And so, and as we connect there, then that divine, we become a portal for that to come through, so that it's shared. So that's why I was told something is dreaming you. I was being dreamed by the divine. Now I'm thrilled about it.
Yeah. I would also add, Hannah, to your second question. In a way, you've described what one aspect of after the tipping point is reached would look like. It's what Lissa.
That's right. That's right. It would have to look like that. We would have to love each other, because we are each other. Because we're all coming from the divine, which is what we are.
Yeah. Recognizing we are all from that versus the current perception of reality that we are all these separate, disconnected people, which is, kind of what sounds like Hannah was describing and what she's working through, and feels completely familiar to me. It's not something that, we for various people have ways of describing this, but after birth, at some point, oftentimes it's called the veil of forgetting or something along those lines.
Yes.
There's some way that we lose touch with that fact that we actually aren't this separate being, and life goes on, all sorts of conditioning happens. You have all these experiences, your brain, starts doing its thing, and ego and psychology, and we forget.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I hope those answered your questions, Hannah, and just keep up the practice and just
keep up the good work, he wants to say.
Yeah, but just don't. It can be just gut wrenching at times and frustrating beyond belief when you're trying to grasp these types of things, and then and it's just not happening. I kind of have likened it to we don't start out as seniors in high school or in college. We go through various grades because in just our regular normal lives, we know that learning is a process and growing is a process, and you have to kind of accumulate knowledge and experience, and it synthesizes, and at some point you get these ahas and go, oh, that's what that meant, and then you're ready for the next level and building on that. And in many ways, what we're talking about is a learning and growing process. It's just different.
Yep. It's actually a letting go of. So it's not an accumulating process.
Yeah.
It's a letting go process. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Right. But there is to me at least, this feels like a growing process as well, a growth process.
Yeah, it does have that feel.
Yeah. Well, we're probably getting close to where we should call it an evening, as we're recording this in the evening in the U.S. Eastern. But Peggy wanted to offer a thank you, and so I want to give her that chance. If you want to unmute, Peggy.
I did. I had lots of things I was really, really grateful to discover in the book, but the main one was you're talking about the void.
Oh, yeah.
And it explained to me the experience I had with one of the pieces of artwork I did a number of years ago. And I called it the void. Where am I? And I was so uncomfortable when I finished painting it. It was like, I'm done. I have to be done with this. I can't stand this. Where am I in this? Was it in my consciousness? Was it in the galaxy? I had no clue, but this was.
I didn't like it either. That's what I was alluding to before. I did not like that. No.
It was very weird. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, and I think
about it much,
Well, but it's also very important to our audiences. So here we have two individuals who have been through part of this whole journey that was not the only one, I'm sure, but was not pleasant, would have preferred not to have had the experience at the time. Is it fair to say you now recognize it was necessary?
No, it was fine. It's totally fine. It was just that I didn't know. I was confused. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand.
Yeah. And the mind, right, you have to let go of the mind, not in a way of going crazy like we think of, normally, but you do have to let go of those things. And
yes, you do.
The process can be disorienting and confusing, and just be okay. It's okay.
Yes.
Okay. No, it's okay. So I want to thank you again as my friend and my teacher, but also on behalf of the Institute for Global Transformation, and helping us share this information. And hopefully this was yet another tool or helpful assistance to people in this effort to help each individual's transformation and getting us to that tipping point. It is, if you look around, it's there's dire need. So
yeah,
it's very important. Yeah. Anything you'd like to share with us in closing?
No, I'm really grateful to have done this. I'm happy that you invited me, and you're a good interviewer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, everything is, I don't have anything else to share, really. I think we did good.
Okay, well, I think we have included in some of our promotional materials. We'll do so when the YouTube is posted as well. But there are several websites that you gave us, along with obviously the book. But Lissa's got her own kind of professional websites about the Enneagram, as well as her artwork, which is, in my opinion, just gorgeous. I think a piece of it is behind you. And so I'd invite folks, if you just want to get a nice, go to look at Lissa's art. It's stunningly beautiful. So do that. So thank you again, Lissa. It's been a pleasure and look forward to seeing you soon.
Pleasure. Yes. Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.